Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about movies, music, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from Jason Derulo, titled Tattoos. The year is 2009 and you're a record executive staring down at your newspaper, with pictures of Rihanna's bruised and bloodied face staring back at you. You later get confirmation in the day that these injuries were caused by her then-boyfriend Chris Brown, who is now facing charges. You also hear through the industry grapevine that Jay-Z, who is infuriated that Chris Brown took a fist to his pop star who he discovered and made a massive success, and he's vowed to torpedo Chris Brown's career, making sure that at least his new album, Graffiti, flops and flops hard. So, as a record executive, what do? Well, in this case, you would probably immediately have to start searching for new artists to fill the niche that Chris Brown inevitably had, and you'll grab anybody who can possibly hit a note and hopefully who can dance. And that is why throughout 2009-2010 we saw a surge in pop R&B acts looking to take over for Chris Brown's shoes. And there were lots of them. Tayo Cruz, Jay Sean, Ayaz, Trey Songz, might as well throw Jeremiah into the mix as well. And to top it all off, we have the artist of who we're going to talk about today. A young man named Jason Derulo. Now, I have to be honest here. Throughout the summer of 2010, I really liked the guy. I mean, I have his album. By no means he was a great pop star per se, but he had a ton of energy, he seemed genuine, and his beats tended to be fairly decent. But then my liking for this guy faded in record time when I started taking a look at some of his lyrics. And I started really noticing the fact that only Jason Derulo can sing when there's auto-tune, and that he shouts out his name at the beginning of every single song. And then in record time, he went from a pop star that I kind of liked to one I loathed. And to me, the second album struck the real low point, with Jason Derulo hitching his wagon to the dying club boom with the opening single, Don't Wanna Go Home, being a nauseating open theft from multiple songs that I really liked. Don't Wanna Go Home ended up topping the worst of hit songs from 2011, and to this day, I don't think I can ever forgive Jason Derulo for it. But let's be fair here, because for some reason, Jason Derulo is actually still around, and to my absolute bewilderment, he's still managing to have chart success. To me, it's kind of reminiscent of the success that Flo Rida achieved, as Jason Derulo is very much this anonymous pop R&B star, a guy who's going to have multiple charting hits, but nobody's going to know or care about these hits in 5 years, because he has so very little distinctive personality. As I said, there's a reason he shouted out his name at the beginning of every single song, because in case the majority of audiences, you would have no idea who this guy is otherwise. And just because he's made songs I hate doesn't mean, like Flo Rida, he can't make songs I like. After all, Flo Rida made I Cry, and Jason Derulo did make Love Hangover, so there is a chance for some improvement here. And that's why ultimately I chose to shove back my waves of nascent contempt for this particular artist and give him another chance. Could I potentially recapture those feelings of positivity I had towards Jason Derulo back in 2010? Well, this album did serve a big purpose in recapturing some feelings I might have towards some of his work, but I'm not quite sure they're the right ones. And while I do think this album, Tattoos, is something of an improvement for Jason Derulo, it's also the sort of album I know I'm going to have a hard time reviewing. However, I'm also not sure I don't recommend Tattoos, because there are moments on this album that everybody needs to hear. Okay, I have to explain this, and I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible. Jason Derulo's new album, Tattoos, is one of the very, very few albums I would ever classify as falling legitimately into the dangerously narrow category of so bad it's good. As a critic, I typically tend to avoid this label because its usual euphemistic counterpart is that of a guilty pleasure, and the two tend to be equivalent in some people's minds. And yet, I don't quite think I would call this album a guilty pleasure. It's more in line with a train wreck, but one so utterly mesmerizing that I just can't look away because the train is loaded with oil drums and propane and they're all on fire, and you just don't know what's going to blow up in your face next. I know that's not exactly a statement of quality, I do get this, but let me try to explain, because even though the rational parts of my mind are telling me that this album is really quite bad, I'm honestly still not sure I don't recommend this album. If if only for the reason to screw with the people in accounting who are inevitably predicting this album be a flop. So, let's start with Jason Derulo himself. While I'm definitely not a fan of his brand of vocals, I can say that as a performer, he has improved. You can tell he's working his ass off on these tracks, and he sells them with a ton of passion, which for some songs might be a bit misplaced, but I'll get to that later. It's clear he's actively trying to work to escape from his anonymity in the shadows of his origin and rise towards the top. And you know what? He actually does a much better job reasserting himself on this new album than he has in previous works, and he's finally dropped his irritating trademark of saying his name at the beginning of every song. That's definitely a big plus for Derulo. On this album, he did show that he had something of identity. And plus, J.R. Rodham is nowhere to be seen on Tattoos, and there's little to no egregious oversampling, which is a big plus in my book. And here's where any discussion of positives and negatives regarding Tattoos goes completely out the window, and that's because we have to talk about the instrumentation and songwriting. Quite simply, the instrumentation on this album spans from traditional pop to R&B to modern style EDM to, well, I honestly have no idea what Jason Derulo was going for here, but it certainly is, well, unique. On the conventional side of the instrumentation, it's mostly forgettable, really, along with the same issues that I have with Jay Sean. It's light, it's breezy, it's mostly upbeat. A lot of songs wouldn't sound out of place on a Backstreet Boys album. I'm not saying it's bad, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of generic, and it really doesn't stand out all that much. Now, it does help matters that the production is actually way better than I expected, and allowing songs like The Other Side, the title track Tattoos, and Rest of Our Life gain some force of personality and swell. But then we have tracks like Talk Dirty, which has this weird off-kilter string section and heavy horns and this odd fluttering sound at the bottom of the mix, and then over the chorus we have twin saxophones playing a melody that sounds vaguely Middle Eastern. I mean, I certainly don't know if it works, but it's bizarre, and it sounds like little else I've heard this year. To me, it was kind of reminiscent of that song from Lady Gaga off the Fame monster, Teeth. And, you know, honestly, the odd instrumentation kind of grows on me, no matter how bizarre and off-kilter and strange it is. And then we have tracks like Trumpets, which starts with this delicate piano at the back of the mix, and then this thick beat comes in to support this underweight trumpet section, and it completely confuses the mood here. I mean, sorry ladies, I can't exactly get into the loving mood with this big brass band behind me. Now that ties into a bigger issue I have with this album. Jason Derulo's Tattoos, in terms of tone, is all over the place because Jason Derulo himself, does not do subtle. And while I will give him points for having songwriting credits on nearly every single track, I think it would have been in his best interest if one of his producers sat down with him and tried to hammer out what on earth he's trying to do with these tracks. Now, in some cases, this clearly did happen, like on Stupid Love and Rest of Our Life, and unsurprisingly, these songs are actually pretty good. But in other cases, somebody should really have stepped in to talk to Jason Derulo, or at least his guest stars. For example, on Talk Dirty, someone really should have stopped 2 Chainz from taking Jason Derulo's attempt to recreate Ludacris's All Around the World, and then just making it way too literal with lines like, "Sold out arenas, you can suck my penis." Yeah, that line really just happened. But really, this comes back to the biggest distinguishing factor of the album, and ultimately the thing that makes it the most confused and difficult to review for me. That's Jason Derulo's songwriting. I think the closest analog to him in modern pop radio would be Pat Monahan from Train. Now follow me along with this. Now Pat Monahan has something of a reputation as a singer-songwriter who is legendary for bizarre non sequiturs, pop culture references, and then making some songs way too literal when they probably shouldn't have been. I mean, go back and listen to Drive By if you want to get an idea of this. He's literally comparing his love to garbage, and with lines like, "On the upside of a downward spiral, my love for you went viral." That just sounds gross. I don't care how you sell it. And for Jason Derulo, it's sort of the same thing. It just raises so many questions regarding certain songs that I'm probably not supposed to think about too hard, but hey, it's me here. So let's take Vertigo, his song with his then girlfriend, Jordan Sparks, where they compare the feeling of hot, passionate being in love with vertigo. Okay, you know what? That's a good premise for a song, to be sure. But the immediate feelings that I at least associate with vertigo are lightheadedness and vomiting. So watching this metaphor just be repeatedly brought up throughout the song and just it just completely killed any mood I was trying to have. Or take the song Trumpets, in which he says various instruments play, and he's reminded of songs from certain acts by certain things associated with this girl, including like her eyes and the way she walks and when she leaves. And then it goes down to associating with things like her bra. And then he all proceeds it with this question like, is it weird that? The thing with this is that he's not specific in which songs that he's referring to from these artists that he's referencing, so I don't know what he's talking about, and since I know so many of the songs from these artists, the is it weird question goes into my mind with the reply, oh god, yes, it's weird, it's really weird. Or take the song like With the Lights On, which is this trap instrumentation driven track that where in the chorus, in order, Jason Derulo reminds him of Bad by Michael Jackson. He asks to keep his Nikes on during sex, and then asks her whether or not he can film it all on his iPhone 5. And throughout the verses, he punctuates all his little non sequitur punchlines with a hasty, get it, get it, get it, nudge, 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 nudge. And look, we get it, Jason Derulo. You may have written a song with the most explicit product placement I have seen in a long time, but man, does it backfire because it doesn't come across as sexy. It just comes across as leering and confused and really kind of ridiculous at points. And yet, with all these completely insane lyrical choices, I don't have any hatred for this album because I have absolutely no idea how I'm supposed to take it in. Am I supposed to take this seriously, or is this a parody or something? I mean, if I take this album at face value, it's a disaster in terms of incoherent tone, bizarre lyrics, and moments just that made my eyes widen comically. But the crazy part is that more than a few times, the bizarre creative decisions work for me way better than I expected, and thus I have a hard time considering this album something of a self-aware parody, particularly considering there are elements that are more conventional that also do work. To me, this album kind of reminds me of Born This Way by Lady Gaga or The Second Law by Muse, a scattershot complete mess of an album that shows an artist experimenting with different styles and ideas, but not in a way that's coherent or cohesive. Sure, he's going to have some hits, but there's also going to be a lot of misses, and either way, it's kind of hard to figure out how you want to take this album in. So look, in good conscience, I can't give this album anything higher than a 5 out of 10, but look, I still recommend you all check out Tattoos by Jason Derulo because while it does miss more than it hits, it manages to make its failures compelling. Seriously, on some of these tracks, you have to see this to believe it. Yeah, there are plenty of songs on this album that don't work. I'm gonna say, I'll stand by that. But you can definitely see that he's trying, and when they're failures, at least they're interesting failures, and they aren't exactly infuriating, just kind of bewildering. And you know, with that, I think Jason Derulo does earn back a few points with me. I don't think I'll ever like him as much as I used to, but if he's willing to experiment and try new things and reassert himself as an artist, I can't exactly get worked up or angry about that, particularly even if he makes those serious missteps. So you know what, Jason Derulo? Keep it up, man. I'm honestly curious where you're gonna go next. Yeah, I didn't expect the review to go in this direction either. Thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I've got more videos coming up on the way. The next week is going to be very busy for me. So yeah, if there's anything I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or if there's any songs you want me to take a look at, or not songs, if you have any albums you would like me to take a look at, I'm more than happy to go on ahead and listen to them. Until next time then, see you later.